Hey everyone! Welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today I'm going to be talking about how change comes when you just lead. My guest this week is Seth Breland, and he is a 19-year-old who is running to be the youngest candidate elected to office in New York since Teddy Roosevelt. I had a really interesting talk with Seth about his candidacy and his hopes for the future. So, without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring Seth Breland.
So, my name is Seth Breland. I am a resident of Whitestone, Queens. I am formerly the youngest person to run for office in New York City history for the New York City Council. I'm a former member of the Education Council, or some people call Education Board for School District 26, and I am now a candidate running in the Democratic primary for the State Assembly District 26 in Whitestone, Bayside, Little Neck, Eastern Queens. And I'm running to be the youngest elected in the state since Teddy Roosevelt, the first Greek American and the first Puerto Rican American to represent this district in the State Assembly as well.
Thank you for that introduction, Seth, and I'm so glad that we got connected and that I get to have you on the show. So, I want to start off by asking you a little bit more about your background and how you got to this point of running your campaign. So, what were some of the experiences you had, or maybe the hardships you faced that brought you to this point where you felt like you needed to run for office?
Definitely. So I first got my first internship in government at 14 for State Assemblyman David Weprin. And I was with him for 3 consecutive summers. And I was, working in my home district at that time, my home assembly district. And he really exposed me to a lot of the political issues and just the quality of life issues that our residents are facing. At his office, I dealt with constituent cases. I did bill research. I had to, um, you know, I saw all that was happening with our schools and education. And I think that really gave me a first-hand view of what was really going on in Eastern Queens and Northeastern Queens, and just what people were facing day to day. We get calls to the office about roads. We get calls to the office about scam calls. We get calls to the office about our schools and school funding. And I think, that really exposed me to there's a lot of things that need to be done in Northeast Queens. And that was back in 2016. So since then, I in 2018 was appointed by Senator Schumer to be a United States Senate page, and I was working down and living in Washington D.C. serving the Democratic caucus, which was another great experience because not only did I get to learn from the senator himself, but I also got to staff all the Democratic caucus and members from Hawaii to Nebraska to Florida to our current vice president was in the Senate while I was there. I got to meet her and a bunch of other people and just hear about what people are facing across the country and how similar it is, different situations, but a lot of similar elements that people are facing in Nebraska and California and Florida. People are facing here in New York. From there, in my senior year of high school, I was appointed by our superintendent to be the student member on the Education Council, which are a public forum and public advocacy group, basically, that's run by the DOE, the Department of Education, that gives parents of the district a voice to come together, talk about what's going on in the district education wise, inequities, where we can do better, how we can best advocate for our schools, and really be that sounding board. And then during the pandemic was when I decided to launch my first run for office for New York City Council. And that was a unique experience itself because we were still in a pandemic. Everything was virtual. There wasn't as much face-to-face contact as there I would have liked it to be. But I did it because I was dissatisfied with our current leadership and our current public electeds. Like I was talking about a little earlier, when I first entered in 2016 at the age of 14, the same issues that existed in 2016 are still taking place in 2020. We still have schools that are underfunded. We still have teachers and parents who don't have a choice in education anymore. We still have small businesses that are crumbling to these big corporations and overdevelopment and just the pandemic in general. And for me, it was, how long can constituents and voters trust their elected officials around election time? Then when things are meant to get done, nothing happens. For years now, the same problems have persisted. The same threats to our quality of life have persisted, and our elected officials, time and time again, come around during election time and they promise to make things better. They say they have the experience to make things better, but nothing ever changes. So, what good does that experience make when nothing comes from it? So that really drove me to run for office. The struggling in our communities, the quality of life issues in our communities, the pandemic and how much it exacerbated just everything, every single issue, and how we still have issues that were before the pandemic and are still here now. And, that really pushed me to run for office, and it's pushing me to run again this time around.
That makes a lot of sense as to how you got to this point of pretty much just putting yourself out there to run. So, you mentioned some of the problems that people are facing in Queens and around the country. And I would love to really know more about what issues you're most passionate about and the issues that have really been at the forefront of your campaign. So, what are some of those issues, and can you explain why they're so important both to you and now to your candidacy?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So Assembly District 26, Northeast Queens, is a very unique district, and it's very unique to New York City. It's very unique to the state. It's a very moderate. It's a very just calm district. It's not the same air. It's not like when you see other districts in Astoria, Manhattan, where they're a lot more liberal and a lot more left. It's a very interesting district, and it can go either way politically. The person I'm challenging is an incumbent who has not faced a primary since 2010. So we're talking for 12 years now. He's been in office and has not faced a primary. And one of the worst things sometimes that has happened is when someone sees that you're young and running for office, they immediately assume that you're someone who's left, someone who's radical, someone who doesn't, deserve to represent this area or doesn't know the values. And that's not what this campaign is about. This campaign is basically about, hey, there are quality of life issues in this district that need to be fixed, and that our current assembly member, Mr. Bronstein, just hasn't fixed them. He hasn't introduced enough legislation. He hasn't introduced enough resolutions. He hasn't done enough for the community, and there's just been too much left undone. One of the near and dear issues to my heart is education. I've had a mother who's worked in education for almost 30 years now as a teacher and as a school administrator. So I've seen firsthand what our teachers go through, and just the fact that parents and students now have less choice. In New York State and New York City, especially, our mayor and our chancellor want to get rid of our specialized high schools. They want to get rid of our gifted and talented programs. And the thing that the DOE, the Department of Education, still doesn't understand is that every student learns differently. Every student learns uniquely, and every parent, every student, every family deserves the academic rigor and a choice that will best suit their student. So I think the fact that we're this far in our gifted and talented programs have already been cut, and we're entering into a new period where a new program is being instituted, I think it is a disgrace. And I think the fact that our assembly member hasn't introduced a resolution and had the Albany step in to protect these programs is a shame, and it's a complete waste of the legislative power that he has. Another big issue that is on my mind is crime. We've seen a big jump in crime, not only in our area, but in New York City in general. And, I'm sure this is a problem that a lot of people are facing in big cities, but, it's just not safe to walk out at night anymore. It's not safe to walk in our parks that were once, you could go at 8 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night in the middle of the summer, and you'd be safe and fine. But nowadays, it's not like that. And we have laws in New York State like bail reform that make it easier for criminals to get released, and makes it easier it makes it harder, sorry, not easier, but harder for the NYPD to do their job. And we really do need to start supporting our law enforcement. You know, the state needs to reaffirm their support for our law enforcement and for law and order and for our safe streets. Because not only does safe streets and unsafe communities affect just residents and property value, but it also affects our seniors. I have an elderly grandmother who lives in Bayside, who is a recent widow because my grandfather died during COVID. I don't feel safe for her to walk out right now at 5 o'clock at night when it's pitch black. I don't, and so this has become a real quality of life issue for a lot of residents. Coming down from Albany is the congestion pricing. We have congestion pricing, which is going to make it harder for residents of Eastern Queens to get into Manhattan, to get into the city, for our doctors, for jobs. We are in a transit desert out here in Northeast Queens, which is another whole issue in itself. But in a place that's just a transit desert that doesn't have the access to trains, to subways, to expanded bus service, the city wants to make it more expensive. The state wants to make it more expensive and harder for our residents to get into the city. And again, bail reform, congestion pricing are all things that our current assembly member voted for. So those are a few of my top two, three biggest concerns for the district. I can go into them a lot more, but this campaign is really focusing about the quality of life issues, the local issues, the things that people are complaining about and affect their daily lives. So that's what really we're trying to stress out there.
I think that's really interesting that you pointed out that people, when they first find out about your candidacy, may think that you're a radical leftist or all of your policies are going to be liberal, but it actually seems to me like your policies are much more catered to what you feel like your constituents would need rather than worrying about how they fall on the political spectrum. So that's really interesting. And I would love to know now, as you've done so much political work and you've gotten to meet so many amazing people, I'm sure you've had some great conversations. Are there any words of advice that have really stuck with you from people that you've talked to or things you've read? Does anything like that really come to mind for you?
There's many quotes and pieces of advice that kind of stick with me today. And one of the biggest ones, actually, that I keep in my back in my mind is one of a close former principal who I got to know throughout my time in education and on the education council and just different policy groups that I have been on because of my work with education. And what he always said was to stay true to yourself, to be honest, stay true to yourself, and be authentic. And people are going to see right through you if you're not authentic. They're going to see that you're ingenuine, and that's going to, not do well for you. And I think that's so true. When running for office, we want our constituents, and I want the voters of this district to feel like they can trust me, to feel like I'm not going to be one of those same old politicians who promises and never gives and never delivers, or one of those same old politicians who contributes to the corruption in our state capitals or in this country, who contribute to that bad name that elected officials do nothing, that they're overpaid because they don't do enough work, they don't deliver. So that's really something that I live by. I want to be genuine. I'm want to make sure people actually know that I care about this district, that I live in this district, that I went to school in this district, that I work in this district, that I understand what they're going through, that we shop at the same shopping centers, that we read at the same libraries, we go to the same Dunkin' Donuts, we go to the same ice cream places, that I am part of the community. And that when it comes to local offices, that's exactly what we need: a local resident, a local constituent, someone who's stepping up to the plate to say enough is enough, things need to change. Another quote that really resonates with me is from our vice president, Ms. Harris, and she said, never ask anyone's permission to lead, just lead. And she said that in response to someone asking her, what is your advice for the youth of today? And I think that is such a powerful quote because, I've spoken to elected officials, um, telling them, going around, making sure they knew that I was running for office, letting them know what was happening. And a lot of them I knew growing up, I had worked with, I had done something with, I looked up to. And the moment you got on the phone with them, they always say, it's not going to work out for you. No, you're too young. It's not going to work out for you. And I can't say I was surprised, but the Democratic Party is at a defining moment. We cannot become a party that is led by one specific group and one specific ideology. And our current electeds, especially the more established ones, need to understand that to win in some of these areas, to push back against these conspiracy theories and falsehood and just false truth people that are running for office on the other side, there has to be a change in leadership. Um, and I wish more elected officials said what the vice president said. I wish they supported more young candidates to run for office because we're at the point where we're at a defining moment and there needs to be a change because what's been in place is not working. So those are two advices that I live by: to just be honest and genuine and just go for it. Just don't wait my turn. Don't wait until somebody or some boss says it's okay to run for office, or it's okay to point out these issues, or it's okay to advocate for your district, or to tell me that it's okay for me to actually fight for the district or fight for the way the district deserves. So those are the two things I kind of live by, and I'm really reminding myself in this primary season that I'm sure is going to be pretty tough because I'm going against an incumbent.
I love those last pieces of advice, and I think you're really staying true to them, so I think that's great. And I have one last question for you before I'll let you go. But lots of young people, particularly college students, want to create change and they want to make a difference in the world, but they may not know how or maybe where to get started. So, do you have any advice for those people who may be listening?
Well, I will never miss an opportunity to say that if a young person wants to get involved in politics, they can always reach out to me and volunteer on their campaign. We could always use some extra staffers and volunteers. But, if you're young and you want to get involved, no matter where you are in the country, attend a town hall, attend a elected officials event, just attend something, go to a community event and just see what's going on, see what's happening, because the best thing you can do is educate yourself and become more knowledgeable and just learn about what's really happening in your community. And then hearing people and hearing what's going on will help point you in the right direction of, okay, I see this is going on here and I want to take action. I want to do this and that. And if I feel passionate about education, maybe I'm going to run for my school board, or maybe I'm going to get involved in my school on a more local level and do something in my school student government or my college student government. Or if you are in an area where your elected official isn't doing the right thing, or they aren't being the best advocate for that area, then run for office. Then do it. There are so many opportunities to get involved. There are so many local offices that people don't think are as glamorous or as high profile, but still those offices are some of the most impactful because they directly impact the constituents in that area. So my advice is just go out there, learn as much as possible, and just take the jump. Just do it. One of the things that I'm really trying to emphasize on this campaign is, it money and having thousands of dollars, $100,000 doesn't mean you can't make change. If you don't have it, does not mean you can't make change. And when I'm going out there with voters, I hate asking for money. I hate saying, "Can I have $1,000 for you to come to my event? Can I have $500 for you to come to this restaurant for a fundraiser?" I'm asking for people's vote, not their money. So if you're going out there and you want to run for office, or you have a cause and you think you can't do it because you can't raise the money, or the money is not there for you, or because you're young, you have more established people saying, "No, no, no, we're not going to give to you," don't listen to them. Don't listen to them at all. Go out there, talk to constituents, talk to your fellow neighbors, and just be honest with them, be genuine with them, and just talk and use your tools like social media. And there are a bunch of great organizations now that will help support you if you want to run for office, especially if you're young. So just go out there, learn more, and just really just take the jump, take the leap.
I really enjoyed talking with Seth, and I'm excited to stay updated and follow along with his political career. And I really want to highlight some of the advice that he shared during our conversation. Seth talked about how he really tries to live by Vice President Kamala Harris's quote, "Never ask anyone's permission to lead, just lead." And I absolutely love that advice. So many of the people I've featured on this podcast, including Seth, aren't waiting for other people to lead movements and get more involved in activism. They're just doing it themselves. No one's going to give you permission to start a project, an organization, or, in Seth's case, a campaign. You just have to do it. Seth recognized that his elected officials weren't doing enough for his community, and he decided that he would step in and lead instead. While it doesn't have to be running for office, I think we can all take a page out of Seth's book and remember that change comes when you just lead. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can follow Seth on Instagram at Seth4NY to get connected with him and stay up to date with his campaign. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at bethechangepodcast. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.